Go ahead and call our meeting of the Commissioner's Student Advisory Council to order this morning. We're very excited to have you joining us virtually. This is our first virtual meeting of the school year. And I would like to turn over the floor to our Commissioner of Education, Dr. Robbie Fletcher, who will welcome you all to the meeting and help provide an overview of our agenda.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones, and welcome everyone to my favorite advisory council, the Student Advisory Council. And I've let both my superintendent advisory councils know that this is by far my favorite group. So they get a little jealous sometimes, but I think they know where the best people are. So again, welcome to each of our students, and thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your taking the time to be a part of this advisory council. First and foremost, I want to start with congratulations to Peter Jefferson, who is a senior at Henry Clay High School, and Daniel Ratley, a junior at Grayson County High School. They were elected by their peers to serve as chair and vice chair of the Student Advisory Council. So congratulations, Mr. Jefferson and Mr. Ratley, on your appointments, and we know that you'll do a great job leading the council. Also want to take the opportunity to do some updates for the group since our last meeting, which was on August 27th. And first and foremost, I want to take the time to thank the Student Advisory Council. They give us input on various topics, and we also want to take the time to acknowledge how we take that input and your advice and put it to work. And the first topic I want to mention is chronic absenteeism. Again, we appreciate the council members who, during the last meeting, offered input on what may be contributing to chronic absenteeism and recommendations for what schools and districts may be able to do to help combat it. We took your advice to heart, and there's posters of chronic absentee billboards are now available on the KDE Chronic Absentee webpage for districts to download and use in their schools, which is an online version, will soon be available also. So again, we took that advice talking about posters in the schools and made those available to districts. Thank you so much for that advice from the Student Advisory Council. Also, too, a few moments to advise you on some of the other items that may be of interest to you as student members of this council. I recently presented data at the Interim Joint Committee on Education concerning the statewide classified and certified staff shortages. The IJCE, as it's called, includes members of both the Senate and the House. And the co-chairs for this committee are Senator Stephen West, who represents Bourbon, Fleming, Harrison, Mason, Nicholas, Robertson, Rowan, and parts of Fayette County, and also Representative James Tipton, who represents Anderson and Spencer counties. Some of the data that students may be interested in, I think that would be a good reference point for each of you is, well, first of all 100%, every one of our districts reported. So 100% of our districts reported, including our smallest to our largest districts, and we're so thankful for their work on this. And a lot of this work that our districts did happened over spring break, when many of their staff members were out trying to get some rest. So of the information that we have at that point, there was 1,766 classified positions. That includes bus drivers, teachers' assistants, could be bus monitors, and other positions, or cooks. There was 1,766 unfilled classified positions as of September 1st. Now, as far as certified, there's 447 licensed educator openings, which includes like school psychologists that require a special license. But also there's 363 special education positions that were vacant, again, as of September 1st. Hopefully some of those have been filled since then. But also 889 general teaching positions are open. And then finally, 64 school level administrative positions. And when we talk about school level administrative positions, we're talking about principals, assistant principals, and of that nature. And also, regarding this long-standing teacher shortage, which is also a nationwide challenge, KDE is working on a marketing campaign as part of a strategic plan to recruit more people into the profession and keep more of our teachers, which we hope will have a positive impact on staffing issues facing all of our Kentucky schools. Over the next 2 to 3 years, if our strategic plan could cut into this number by half, it would be a great accomplishment. Also, too, we also met as a Board of Education. The Kentucky Board of Education met on October 7th and 8th. There's a lot of topics, including the evaluation, beginning the evaluation of the new commissioner, which was a great meeting for me. I really enjoyed that. It was setting forth the expectations for the commissioner as we move forward. But also, too, the board outlined some other legislative priorities, including addressing the teacher shortage. And we also passed a unanimous resolution which supported public funding for public schools only. So again, we did that during our October 7th and 8th Kentucky Board of Education meeting. As a matter of fact, Preston Graham is here to give an update a little bit later, and we'll talk about that here shortly too. Another huge topic that's occurred since our last meeting is the Kentucky United We Learn Council held a convening on October 21st and 22nd. We reviewed feedback. I think we had 647 surveys that were answered, and it's providing us more information as we narrow down to a framework for the new assessment and accountability model. And KDE and its partners are working on revisions to that framework, and we'll let the council provide feedback again in November. A lot of our discussions at this point have leaned heavily towards incorporating student growth as opposed to change. And for those of you that may not be familiar with that part of accountability, when you look at change, it's comparing 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders from this year versus their performance on the accountability and assessments from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders from last year. So you have a new group of 3rd graders that come on, and then 5th graders that have graduated out to middle school. So it's not really comparing the same set of students. There's some overlap, but it's not the same. But the point there is a lot of our people that we've interviewed they really want to look at individual student growth. In other words, where did you get the individual student and where did you take them? So again, student growth as opposed to change is one of the major talking points as we move forward. Also, we've looked at the possibility of through course assessments when it comes to math and reading. Instead of having that state assessment at the end of the year, having a through course model where there's some formative assessments along the way that lead up to a summative model at the end. This is very similar to the interim assessments that you see in elementary, middle, and some high schools when it comes to different tests such as maybe iReady, MAP, or other things of that nature. There's also a lot of information. As a matter of fact, 75% of the people we polled are very interested in incorporating local accountability models as part of the overall model. So again, there's a lot of decision points as we move forward, but some exciting decisions have been leaning towards, and we've been narrowing down from these prototypes down to a model framework that we'll have out in the next month or so. Again, my good friend Preston will be here. Mr. Graham will be here a little bit later to talk to you a little bit more about your input into the latest model. Now, before I go into the overview agenda, I will also say I want to let you know a little bit about the favorite part of my job, and that is visiting schools. I've made several school visits over the past few months, including Livingston County, Murray Independent, Union, Christian, Logan, Shelby County, Rockcastle County, and the Ignite Institute up in Kenton County, and several others. I've even attended a couple of soccer games and a few football games along the way. And probably the most fun I've had so far as visiting schools, I also moderated a middle school academic team match. It was between Bondurant and Georgetown Middle Schools, and that was a lot of fun. It was a great match. Both schools did a great job. And then next week I'll be on the road to Spencer and Trimble County. So those are the two that I'm moving towards. And as I've mentioned, Mr. Graham, a couple of times, you need to know that I am planning a visit to Woodford County in the very near future. So again, a lot of times I get to see kids, I get to sit in the floor with kindergarten kids, talk about the things that they're building. One school in Logan County was building toys, and they had to present that toy as a kindergarten student and talk about what it was. I've seen other things as far as the Ignite Institute. I got to sit with 80 prospective educators that were going through an Educator Rising program and talk to them about education and what was going on and any questions that they may have had. So before we go any farther and before I give an overview of the agenda, any particular questions maybe from the group that they'd like to answer? Anything at all? That's a little bit out of the ordinary, I think, but if there's any questions, Dr. Jones, you see any questions from our students?
Commissioner, if I may, I do want to address, we have a question regarding interpreters. We are quickly addressing and checking on the interpreters. Okay. My understanding was they were supplied for the meeting, so we are quickly addressing that. I do want to make sure our students are aware. I don't otherwise see comments or questions in the chat at the moment.
Okay, do we want to, Dr. Jones, do we want to pause or do we want to move forward?
I am checking quickly. I would like to mention that every member can turn on closed captions on their side. I do just want to make sure we're addressing our interpretive service, and we are checking on that on our side as well. But I'm waiting for a couple of more comments or questions. But I would ask that we do just pause for just a moment as we check into this. And if you do have questions for as Dr. Fletcher mentioned, if you do have questions, please add those to our chat. And we can, or he may answer those as well.
We do have someone with their hand raised.
Brittany, do you have a question? And I see, Onette, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Sorry if it's a little loud. I'm in the hallway, but Dr. Fletcher, do you plan on visiting all counties in Kentucky?
That is my goal. And of course, there's 172 technically school districts. So over the next, during my tenure, I would hope to visit every single district as we move forward. Now, as far as doing that each year, hopefully we can look at maybe 25, 30 each year and then try to work away maybe a little bit more as we go through. But it is a goal to visit all school systems as we move forward. I think that would be very important as commissioner to get to see everyone in their home environments. So it'd be a great opportunity for me. But thank you for asking that.
Of course, Warren County would love to have you.
You know, I have been to Bowling Green probably, I think, at least 3 different times on speaking engagements, but I haven't been in schools. I've spoke to the Barren River Area Development Group, and there were students there, but I haven't been in the school system yet. So either you know, Superintendent Fields or Superintendent Clayton, I'm sure they wouldn't mind the commissioner visiting. So we'll work on that to get into the schools, not just to visit, but more. Warren County again has been beautiful and I've enjoyed it, but there's been at least 3 different opportunities I've been there, just not been in part of the school. So and that's in the past 2 or 3 months. So again, I've enjoyed it, and I've actually been to Buc-ee's a couple times while I've been there too. So.
Here's a standing precedent is that you have to put your request in about 2 months in advance if you ever want Mr. Fletcher to show up to your school.
Well, Preston unfortunately has, you know, he has reminded me a couple of times that Woodford County's on the list, and I do have my executive assistant, Ms. Ball, that is working on that for us. And now my request back is Preston has to be my personal, you know, tour guide as we go through Woodford County. Any other questions from the group? Anything I can try to answer?
I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat. And Jen said, Jen Ginn on our team said to go ahead and move forward, and that we are further checking and addressing, checking on the interpreters.
Okay, Dr. Jones, I'll go ahead and give an overview of the agenda. We will have our mindful minute here shortly, and that'll be led by Dr. Searcy. We appreciate her work with our students. Also, we'll have a discussion on vaping and substance use in schools. That'll be led by Dr. Vanderhaar and Ms. Napier, who are also program consultants here at KDE. And then we'll also have input. Again, we have Mr. Graham, who is our Kentucky Board of Education non-voting student member from Woodford County, that will be asking for your input on the assessment and accountability system. And keep in mind, we take your input to heart. So you have an impact that could be for years to come with your input on our assessment and accountability system. And at the end, our new president and vice chair, Mr. Jefferson and Mr. Ratley, will have the opportunity for announcements and anything as far as sharing from our members. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Jones.
Thank you. So at this time, I will call roll. Please feel free to unmute your microphones as you feel comfortable and say present, or put in the chat that you are here. I will quickly call roll. And Lisa Abrampaugh.
Present.
Mary Beth Boland.
Present.
Graham Borden.
Present.
Annie Cockerham O'Donnell. Thank you. Isabella Edgehill.
Present.
Anaji Fox.
Present.
Manas Garla.
Present.
Preston Graham.
Present.
Samara Higgins.
Present.
Onette Irakiza.
Present.
Peter Jefferson.
Present.
Alan Kalambayi.
Present.
Sophia Langford.
Present.
Gabriella McAdams. Good morning. Tanvi Rakesh.
Present.
Daniel Ratley.
Present.
Luisa Sanchez Almaneres, excuse me.
Present.
Abigail Sears.
Present.
Sophia Staples. Hua Ta.
Present.
Austin Vidito. Carly Watts. Elieta Yanez Medina.
Present.
And India Young.
Present.
Is there any name I overlooked? All right, thank you. Roll
I'm
call.
sorry, did you get Annie Cockerham O'Donnell?
They did.
Okay, thank you.
I did, thank you. Good morning, Annie, and to everyone. Roll call is complete. I will quickly transition, and you all have been sent a copy of the draft summary minute notes from the August 27, 2024 Commissioner Student Advisory Council meeting. So we will call for a vote to approve those minutes. So I will quickly ask if there is a motion to approve those minutes that you were sent. Just
Motion to approve the minutes from Peter Jefferson.
Thank you, Peter. Do I have a second?
Second to approve.
And who is that? Is that Daniel?
Daniel, yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. We'll ask for a voice vote. So either unmute your microphones or put in the chat if you vote in favor. If all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye, or make a note in the comments.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Are any opposed? All right, hearing none, our summary minutes have been approved from the August 2027 meeting. And at this point, we will transition to our next presentation, which is with Dr. Michelle Searcy, who was with us at our last meeting, and she will lead us through a mindful minute. Dr. Searcy.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Good morning, everyone. It is nice to see you and be here with you today. Before we get started on our Mindful Minute, I do want to give Dr. Woods Tucker an opportunity to bring you greetings this morning as well. Dr. Tucker?
Thank you, Dr. Searcy. Grand Rising, everyone. Good morning. Thumbs up. How's everyone doing? Thumbs up? Thumbs up. Do I see any thumbs up? Okay, very good. Very good. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, whether in person or virtually. This is year 36 for me in public education. And every time I see you all, I really get excited. And I certainly share the enthusiasm and the joy our commissioner has. You can just hear it. He exudes it in his voice when he has an opportunity to work with this committee and all committees, but especially with student committees. And again, even after year 36, when I have an opportunity to work with students and have fun with you, even joke with you a little bit, I am rejuvenated and excited to be a part of this great profession of ours. And we certainly hope that many of you not only give your feedback, which is tremendously valued, that you think about becoming educators as well. There's no other worthy profession that I can think of in which you can give back and make a difference in folks' lives. Recently, I was talking with my son. My youngest son is a junior in high school, and he shared with me a quick little poem, and I'm going to share that with you in my last minute or two that I have with you. And so if you would allow me to share this with you, I'll do so. The poem or the message goes that you're braver than you believe, and stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Keep your face to the sunshine, and you can never see a shadow. You'll never be in a shadow. So I want to share that quick message with you. And again, thank you for your work. Thank you for being the best that Kentucky has to offer, because you are why we are. You are why we do the jobs that we do, why our teachers, our custodians, all of our support staff that Commissioner Fletcher talked about, our administrators and superintendents, everyone in this profession. We are here for you, and you are why we are. Thank you. Have a great day. I'm looking forward to staying online with you a little while longer, and I'm really looking forward, Dr. Searcy, in engaging in the Mindful Minute. That uplifts me as well.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. We are glad you are able to join us today. You guys, thank you again for being here. I want to just remind you that today is all about you. So I know it can be difficult sometimes to connect in this virtual space, especially given you may be in the hall, you may be in a classroom. You have lots of different locations that you're joining in from us today. So we want to hear your voice. If you can unmute and give feedback, that's fantastic. If you can't, because of where you're located, please, we encourage you to use the chat feature this morning so that we can still connect virtually or connect while in this virtual space. Okay, if we can go on to that next slide. So I want to welcome you back to our second Student Advisory Council. Just a quick recap of our last Mindful Moment that we did last when we were in person in August. We talked a little bit about WHOOP goals and healthy goals versus unhealthy goals. Healthy goals help us to continue to get better, to improve on where we are in life and where we want to go. Unhealthy goals can sometimes really make us feel undue stress and pressure. They're unrealistic. And so we always want to make sure that we're writing those healthy goals and continuing to improve. We did that by starting to write in our journal that you guys all were provided the last time you were in person. If you can, if you don't already have those out, go on and get your journal that we gave to you last time, because we're going to use those again today and reflect a little bit about the goal that you've written for this year as being a part of the Student Advisory. So I'll give you just a second to do that. While you're getting your journals out, Dr. Fletcher, I will be joining you in Spencer County, so I am really looking forward to that visit. I too enjoy going into school districts and getting to meet with students and our educators across the Commonwealth. And in Spencer County, we're going to get to meet at the middle school and hear from students that are already starting to think about their career pathways and things that they're interested in. So excited for that trip. All right, can you go on and advance to the next slide? Okay, so before we use our journals, let's do a quick welcome and inclusion activity. You guys, I've talked about my love for coffee. It is strong. I've got it with me today. If you can, drop in the chat. How are you feeling today? And let me start by saying there's no shame if you have a 1 or a 2. It's okay to be a 1 or 2. 1 is you could be doing a little bit better. 2 is you're doing pretty decent. Not outstanding, but you're okay. 3, you're doing nice. And 4 is outstanding. You see there, you got that whipped cream and chocolate drizzle. Your day is really going quite well. If I am being honest, I will say that I'm probably a 2 today, not because of anything work related, but more because my daughter got married last week and it was a beautiful wedding, but it was exhausting. So I need a little more energy to get to that 3 or 4, but I'm still recuperating a little bit. Let's check the chat here. We have some 2s, lots of 3s. Awesome. 1, 4. I need some of that energy, Gabriella. I'll have to tap into that. I'm so glad you're doing wonderful today. So thank you on the wedding. It was beautiful. It really was. Watching their union was wonderful. Just need a little bit more sleep. Okay, if you can go on and click that button. So what we're going to do is, if you want to take out your journal, if you can, if you don't have your journal, you can use a piece of paper, anything you have to write with, or your phone even to text on. And just take 2 to 3 minutes to journal what is currently on your heart. What are you thinking about? What's on your mind today? If you chose a 1, 2, 3, or 4, what caused you to feel that way? Journaling is a great way for us to really tap into how we're feeling. So I'm going to give you just about 2 minutes to think about how you're doing today, and then we'll come back together. But there are other ways that you can journal as well. Journals don't just have to be words. We can journal through art, through pictures, drawing. We can even do collages or poetry. Like, it's just a good way, especially at the end of the day, to tap into how your day was. What are some things you want to get off your chest, off your mind, that you can put into the journal? So the journal that you were given, it can be used in multiple ways. Of course, to take notes and thoughts and ideas on things that you gain from your experience here on the advisory council. You can write down things that you want to make sure that you talk about or give feedback on as people are presenting. Because sometimes when we hear presentations, we have something in our mind, but by the time they get to Q&A, we forgot those. So you can jot those down in your journal. But it's also a great way to help with stress and anxiety, to make sure that we're getting things off of our mind that can weigh us down. Let's go on and progress to the next slide, please. All right. You have your journals now, hopefully, and I want you to turn back to your WHOOP goal that we wrote on the last time that we met. Now, just a reminder what WHOOP stands for. W stands for wish, so it's something that you would like to accomplish. O is outcome. If you accomplished that wish, what would that look like? The other O stands for obstacles. What are some obstacles that you can foresee that could possibly keep you from meeting your goal? And then the P is plan. What is your plan to get around those obstacles? Because we want you to be successful. So I want to give you a second. Is there anyone that would like to share what their WHOOP goal was when we met in August? You can drop that in the chat or come off mute, but we'd love to hear some of your WHOOP goals if you feel comfortable sharing. Peter?
I can go ahead. My original WHOOP goal was to run a personal record in the cross-country season. And for me, my season has just concluded, and I can say that I was successful. But more importantly, there was definitely a significant obstacle that I got a small injury about 2 weeks after our last meeting. But in terms of the plan, so to speak, that I wrote out, there was some time to recover from that. And last week, I was able to be a part of our team qualifying for the regional race. And I was able to fulfill my goal. That's kind of, it was actually a great story, almost textbook for the goal.
It is almost textbook, Peter. I will slip you that money under the table later for saying all of that. It was perfect. Like you talked about the importance of the goal, the outcome. You reached your goal. Congratulations. I would love to know your PR, by the way.
Ran 18:08.
Very nice. Congratulations. My son was a runner, so I know how hard that is. You talked about how you anticipated the obstacle, like these are some obstacles that could come your way, and how you were going to rise above those obstacles. Thank you, Peter, for sharing. Congratulations. All right, Austin.
One goal of mine was to be a collegiate golfer, and I think in the past week or two, I got my first offer to go play golf somewhere. And this goal was like super important to me because like I could prove something to myself. So it was super like personal to me because like it was something that I've always dreamed about. And it wasn't an easy process as I also went through injuries like Peter did. And I went through like a few mental stages where I wasn't in like the best headspace, but I had a plan to like talk with my coaches and to like not take everything as serious. And I was able to achieve my goal as Peter did.
Congratulations, Austin. That is wonderful. I know if you were getting offers to play, I'm assuming that's at the collegiate level.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, at the collegiate level, that takes a lot of dedication and practice and really putting everything you have into that sport. So that is amazing. Congratulations on that. I have not played golf, but I did go to Top Golf, and I did not really realize how physically straining playing golf is. So I have a complete new respect for it just in those lines. But congratulations on your post-secondary offer to play collegiate sports. That is wonderful. We hope that wherever you go, that it leads you back to the state of Kentucky so that we can keep our best and brightest right here in the Commonwealth. Okay, one more, if anyone would like to share your goal. And it's okay if you have not met your goal yet. Like this is a year-long goal. So it's okay if you haven't met that yet. All right, Seth.
Yeah, I made a goal to start up boxing, and I did meet that goal, and I started boxing after school for 15 minutes a day. I'm hoping to get it up to 30.
Congratulations. And I love how you started off by saying, like, you didn't remember we talked about healthy and unhealthy goals. We want it to be manageable. We want it to be achievable, attainable. And you said, okay, let's just start with 15 minutes. Like that is where I'm going to start. That's a pretty good length of time for boxing. But the next time, now that I've reached this goal, I'm going to continue that goal. And that's what we want to see. We always want to have goals for ourselves so that we're continuously improving, getting better, doing things in our community to make it a better space. So congratulations on meeting your goal as well. All right, so next steps, y'all. Before we're not going to move to the next slide yet, but in your next steps, if you have already reached your goal, go on and write what's your next goal. What is the next thing that you really would like to focus on and accomplish? If you haven't met your goal yet, that is okay. Go on and write down what are some strategies, what are some steps you are going to take. Let's just do 1 or 2 strategies that you can take between now and the end of the year, so the end of December, to meet those goals. So think about it for just a minute. I'm going to stop talking and let's just write 1 or 2 steps or strategies that you can take to help meet your goal from now until December. Not that you have to complete your goal till in December, but that you want to make progress on it. So let's take just a minute or 2. If you did not get finished, that is okay. Just make sure you come back to it later. We are time restricted, so I would love to give you a few more minutes, but you can always come back and finish this later. All right, we can go on and progress to the next slide. We are going to talk about stress for a little bit this morning. So stress is not always a bad thing. We can have good stress and bad stress. Stress is your body's way of responding to a perceived threat or a demand that you might be having. It's normal. It's a healthy part of development. And it says in adulthood here, but we know that there is stress when you are teenagers. There is stress when you're adolescents. Like there is stress no matter what age that you are in life. But we're going to talk about the three main types of stress, the impact that it can have on you, and ways that we can manage that. All right, if you can click for me. The first type of stress that we're going to talk about is positive stress. Positive stress is completely normal. It's actually good. It's our body's way of preparing us for a task at hand or something that we have to face in life. So some examples of that might be if you start a new job, like you guys were just saying, starting a new sport or a new task that you're trying to learn. Public speaking. Y'all, my mom, when she gets up to talk in front of people, she starts sweating, her heart starts palpitating, and most of the time she cries. And that's just her body's response to the stress of speaking in public. Taking a test is also a positive stress that we can experience. All right, let's go on to that next one. So the next type of stress is called tolerable stress. It's difficult. It's a challenge to go through. It can be overcome. You can be supported in tolerable stress and get through those really difficult times in life. So some examples of that is if you have an injury. It sounds like we have quite a few people that play some type of sport or engage in some type of physical activity. And an injury can be a stressor on your body, on your mental headspace. It can cause us to really step back, and it is difficult to cope with. But with some of those resources that we're going to be talking about, you can get through them. It's manageable. Grief is another form of tolerable stress. We're all going to experience grief in our life, and that's not necessarily just when we lose someone. If someone that we love or care about dies, we can also grieve things like, let's go back to our sports analogy. If you are an athlete and you have an injury that prevents you from continuing on with that sport, that is going to be a grief. That is a loss of something in your life. You can also lose and grieve friendships, relationships, dreams or expectations that you had. Like, let's say that your parents possibly get a divorce. That is something that you are going to grieve because it is something that is going to change drastically in your life. But you can get through it. It's tolerable. Like with the right support structures and systems in place, that is something that you can learn to cope with and get through. And then the other one is disaster is another example. We've seen a lot of disaster happening in our country lately. We've had floods and hurricanes and tornadoes, and communities are going through unimaginable difficulties. But with the right support, they are going to be able to get through that and to work through that. It's going to be a challenge, but it's something that they can work through. Let's go on and hit enter, and let's see that last types of stress. The last type of stress is the stress that we want to avoid in our lives. Toxic stress. Toxic stress happens over a long period of time. It is very strong and happens consistently, and you don't have any support systems or structures or hope that you can get through it. Toxic stress can include violence, long-term abuse. So if you're in an abusive relationship, that can be personal or professional, or if you have a chronic injury or illness that you are struggling with and you do not have a support structure in place. I want to really point that out. When you look at toxic stress, it says that is prolonged, strong, and or frequent experiences of adversity without protection or support. So we want to make sure that you do have protection and support to get through that. Before we move to the next slide, can you guys, I would love to hear your voice in this. Like, what is something anything that you want educators to know about student stress. You can come off mute or you can drop that in the chat. What do you want? What do you need educators to understand and realize about student stress? Austin.
That it's not all about like school, that it could also be about like your personal life. So like, I know a lot of teachers may think that like our work, their work day assigned, tends to be the burden of our stress when it's not really. Like we all have lives outside of school, and when stuff isn't going perfectly, it can also be stressful too. So I guess having an educator know that like all of the stresses aren't from their schoolwork. It's also from like our personal lives too.
Thank you, Austin. I appreciate that. 100%. Like you guys are people. You're humans first. And your life isn't just in the school bubble. You have lots of things that are impacting you. And stress isn't always just about school. Thank you for saying that. You see, we've got 2 people with their hands raised. Samara.
I'll go ahead and add on to what he said too. I feel like a lot of teachers kind of are like take our stress and kind of minimalize it in comparison to everything else they have going on in the classroom. But like you said, we are also people beyond students too. So I think too, like having teachers kind of realize the fact that students are still trying to navigate what it means to have stress in their life.
Thank you. That is a great point to make. Like, you're still learning, and you're going to be learning ways to handle and manage stress your entire life. I'm still learning, and this is my field of study, and I'm always learning new things about stress and how to handle it, because every time a stressor happens, just because it's let's say a tolerable stress doesn't mean I'm going to be able to handle it the same way. It depends on what type of tolerable stress that I'm currently dealing with. So thank you so much for sharing that. Daniel.
Okay, yeah. I mean, kind of just like what both of them said, like having your personal issues, but also I feel like other issues in school, like currently we're having finals week right now. We're on a trimester-based system. That's why that's happening. So I feel like just having the teachers to understand that, like, I have 3 finals in one day on Thursday. So like, I think just kind of the teachers working together and understanding that they can really put a lot of stress on like certain students based on like how things line up.
I think that's a great point, Daniel. Thank you for sharing that. Like sometimes educators, they see you as the student in their class, and they forget you might have 5, 6, 7 other classes, plus the stress of life outside of our work schedule. And school right now is your work schedule. So I think that is an excellent point. Thank you so much for saying that. All right, we're going to take 2 more. Louisa.
Yes. Also, just like from personal experience, and something that comes up is really knowing the balance of how much you should share with your teachers about your personal life, just because really at the end of the day, it is important to acknowledge that educators are not therapists. They are not mental health professionals. And sometimes setting boundaries could be difficult when you really want them to understand you and you really want them to be in your shoes and make sure that they know what you're going through. But also just realizing that there are some things that educators will not know about students' lives. And so it really comes down to empathy and to really working with students to make sure that the learning space is comfortable and that the academic classroom is productive. So yeah.
Thank you, Louisa. You are wise beyond your years. So you're right, not all educators feel comfortable or even know how to respond. But the great thing to know is finding an adult in the building that you can talk to, that you do feel comfortable with. Because even though we may not have the answers, we're going to work to try to get those for you. The adults in your building that are in your life, we want to be able to support our students so that you can be the best version of yourself. So think of it this way. Not everybody that knows CPR is a doctor, right? Like, I know how to provide CPR. I can keep someone alive until I can get them to the doctor. So think about that in terms of mental health. Your teacher may not know how to respond with all of your mental health needs, but they can connect you to maybe a school counselor or other mental health professional in the school that can take over from there. But wow, what a powerful statement, Louisa. I really appreciate you saying that. That is very insightful. Okay, our last one, Christy.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify about the stress with school. I get a little bit like are we like what exactly are we talking about? Are we just talking about stress with school or like what all?
All types of stress, just stress that students may be experiencing that they want educators to know about. It can be in the school or outside of the school.
Okay, so meaning like what, like you want the students to feel comfortable talking to teachers about their stress?
Not necessarily, but what do you want educators to know about student stress? Maybe not your personal stress, but like we've heard from some of our students here, that they want educators to know that stress doesn't just come from within the classroom. Sometimes it's at home or in our personal lives as well, or they have jobs outside of school too. So just things that you may want educators in general to know about teen stress.
Yeah, I think with me, it's that letting me know things last minute causes a lot more stress. And I, sometimes things don't happen on time, and I know that I've gotten kind of in trouble with teachers before for things not being done in a timely manner, but I wasn't told in a timely manner either.
Annie, that is so good. Like, communication is critical. And that's not just stress on students, that's stress on the educators too. Like, the more that we can plan in advance and communicate well with students, the less stress on our students and the less stress on our teachers. That is a great point, Annie. Thank you. All right, if we can go on to the next slide. All right, so we've talked about stress. We've talked about different types of stress. That's not all the types of stress, those three categories, but those were the three we were going to touch on today. Now I want to talk just a moment about protective factors or coping strategies to help you deal with stress. Now, this is just a small number of them, but these are some of the protective factors or coping strategies I wanted to talk about today. So the first is deep breathing. And you guys, that sounds very almost elementary, if you will, but deep breathing is so good for our bodies. It calms our nervous system. It lowers your blood pressure and your heart rate. If you notice, when you get nervous or stressed, your heart rate elevates. It starts to beat really fast. You could start shaking a little bit, and taking those deep breaths lowers your blood pressure and your heart rate, and it also lowers stress hormones. So at the end of the next slide, we're going to do a breathing exercise. Something else that you can do to help you manage stress is to exercise. Physical activity is wonderful for stress management. That's why sometimes you see people saying when they're super stressed, I got to go to the gym. I've got to pump some iron. I got to take a run. All of those things that really help to lower their stress is good for your body, physically and mentally. We already talked about journaling, how that is good for your mind. But then also time management. This is something that I do not do well. Taking breaks and taking tasks and breaking them into smaller steps, and then creating a schedule to get those completed. My part with time management that I struggle with personally is saying no. Like, sometimes it is okay when people ask us to do things or ask us to help with things to say no. Like saying no is prioritizing your own mental health. And we don't always give ourselves permission to do that. If someone reaches out to me and they want to know if I can present or go to an event or pick up and help with something within the community that I'm involved in, I always want to say yes, because I'm a helping person. I want to help people. But sometimes doing that causes a lot of damage to myself. So that time management is important. And that is something I am learning and trying to grow in every day. And then healthy sleeping habits and avoiding overcommitment. So I'm going to do one of these activities with you. If you can go to our last slide. And this is a breathing activity. So before we do box breathing, y'all, if you struggle with taking a deep breath, sit up real straight for me. You can put your hand on your stomach. And where you want to breathe is from your diaphragm. So that's your belly. And you want to suck your belly into your back almost when you're taking that deep breath in. And then you're going to feel your hand kind of push it out as we're releasing the air. So if you can go on and click on that video for me, and we're going to do 1 minute of box breathing.
Thank you, Dr. Searcy. At this time, we will invite Dr. Judy Vandahar and Jessica Napier. They are program consultants from our Division of Student Success in the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support. And they are going to lead you and speak with you for a discussion on vaping and substance use in schools. I invite Judy and Jessica to join us at this time.
Good morning. Can you hear me? You can hear me. Okay. Yes, I am Judy, and I work in the Division of Student Success, and that our office is an umbrella. We work on many interrelated topics, and so happy to share some new information. And really, our goal today is to listen and more than we talk. So I'll let Jessica introduce herself.
Good morning. I work alongside with Judy in the Division of Student Success. I work in the Safe Schools branch, and I'm happy to be here as well with Judy. And I will pass it back to Judy so she can get started with some data.
Thank you. All right, next slide. Thank you. So this is some of the latest information we have from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data. And if you notice, the title of the particular chart is high school. So while I think overall, so this is Kentucky, and we are higher than the national average, you know, this is what we want to see. So we want to see things going down. And while I really want to celebrate this, and I'm curious if anyone on here remembers when we last shared some data, which grade levels were increasing the most in vaping use. Does anyone remember?
I think Peter has his hand up there, Judy.
Oh, okay. Yes, Peter. Sorry, I was looking in the chat.
No worries. I would agree with Seth. I believe it was the middle schoolers in the 7th and 8th grade.
So yes, both elementary actually had the highest, 475% increase, and then middle school was the second highest. It was around a 300% increase, and then high school is the highest in usage, and they're growing at like 107%, I believe. So yes, so we're experiencing more an increased use among our youngest students. So just wanted to make a note of that. So next slide, please. And I'm going to try to stay true to my words about listening more than we speak. So what hasn't necessarily changed in terms of trend, and this is, again, from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data, the latest we have, we see this increasing. So feeling sad or hopeless for at least 2 weeks. And we have just under half of students reporting this in high school. And next slide, please. There is absolutely a connection when we look at mental health suicide and vaping and nicotine, so nicotine and THC use. So to me, this is one of the most powerful slides, and we partner with the Behavioral Health and the Department for Prevention. So Tara Ruckert is one of our partners in presenting and sharing this information and resources, which I do want to share later. So I don't know if you all, if this is kind of striking to anyone on here. This is just looking at 10th graders, and the blue is just 10th graders. So this is comparing all 10th graders to 10th graders who use nicotine in orange, who use THC in green, and then those who use both THC and nicotine together. And if we see just alone 1 in 4, just looking at the blue, 1 in 4, you all talked about stress levels, and Dr. Searcy talked about toxic stress and tolerable stress, which is tolerable only when we have those protective factors and people we can connect to. But 1 in 4 10th graders experiencing serious psychological distress in the past month. And this is, again, self-reported. But then look at how it jumps up, right? So look at also suicide ideation and suicide attempts. 8% of 10th graders suicide attempt. But then look at how it jumps up with nicotine use, with THC, and then with both, right? So as one of you wise students mentioned last time we talked, the impact of stress and how it's easier for kids, in your estimation, to grab a vape to cope with their stress and to find a counselor to talk to, or to be able to talk to a counselor. A lot of young people are using this to cope with their distress, and it's actually worsening it because of what it is doing into the brain and to the psyche, what these substances are doing. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. So next slide, please. And this, I believe, is our last one. Again, as one of you all mentioned, teachers aren't trained, right? They're not mental health counselors, they're not therapists, and they're also not trained in this world of substance use prevention and substance use, helping young people quit. And so a lot of times what we see in our data, which we shared last time, is that we are punishing this behavior. We are punishing the use of vapes, from like first time kids going to the county attorneys for criminal prosecution, to overwhelmingly we see out of school suspension, but also, happy to say, a lot of in school. So it's about half and half with the in school and out of school. So we are moving in the right direction. However, those, there is House Bill 142, and I am going to put the resource in there that requires schools to give every student cessation and prevention materials, and also requires the use of evidence-based information and support to help kids who are addicted to quit. Kids who are using, and many are addicted already, because this slide is showing, again, this comes from our partner Tara at the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. Kids have been victims. They are victims of predatory marketing. When combustible cigarettes, just regular cigarettes use, went all the way down to about 4% nationwide, the big tobacco industry took notice, and so they're marketing specifically to young people through the flavors, the colors, all the advertisements. So that's another kind of frame to kind of consider the big apparatus around young people, and should we be punishing that, versus helping support kids get off when they are addicted and want to get off. And the next slide we have is going to be all of the questions. So I know we are running a little bit behind. So Dr. Jones, if you can just, I guess, give us a hand signal or just let us know at what point, because we really want to garner the information from you all, because we have already, from what you shared last time, we've already presented that in the mix of all of the other information and training to the DPPs who are kind of over truancy and a lot of safe schools and stuff. We've presented it to family resource coordinators. So we are using the information that you all share with us, because you're so wise, and it's so important that anything we do, we are incorporating your wisdom into it. So we are hoping to capture more today. So
happy
Yeah,
to.
so we're gonna.
I was going to say happy to signal, but go ahead, and I see there are some hands raised already with the.
Great. So we're just going to kind of start with our discussion questions, and just from that little bit of data there, what initial reactions from this information shared do you have?
okay, I guess I'm having trouble with the way my Teams is set up to see. I see one hand.
I can help support.
Okay, thank you.
I have Aliette with their hand raised.
Yes. Yes, thank you. The first question that came to my mind was, have you guys studied the use of social media or, well, the use of cell phone in relation to vaping or mental health? Because I do think that the excessive use of social media, especially in our generations, is really affecting, and it has a direct correlation with our mental health. Have you guys seen like any study, or have you guys started thinking about how possible solutions related to social media?
That's a great question. I haven't, our office isn't specifically studying that particular, issue in general, but it is something that we have shared some of the research, which shows exactly what you're saying. There is an absolute correlation when you look at the trends of increasing depression and isolation and loneliness among young people with the rise of social media. So much so that I know there are major lawsuits, happening. So yeah, it's just like with vaping, the use of social media is something that, I mean, what other institution is there to tackle it other than, we're education, which, we have so many roles now in society, like as the institution, which is educating young people and in the midst of these humongous challenges in the context. So you're bringing up a really important point. So thank you for sharing that.
Next, Seth Langford.
I think it's sort of a double-sided coin. I think if the trend is in elementary school kids, then it most likely is being normalized at home in some form or fashion. But I understand the Department of Education can't necessarily do anything to prevent parents from normalizing that behavior and exposing their kids to those things. So I guess my question is, has peer pressure been studied? Like, is there an increase in peer pressure to try smoking or vaping?
So I can just jump in as far as what I know anecdotally from talking to young kids is definitely peer pressure is a part of it. And having just talked to all the family resource coordinators, about 80 of them yesterday, a lot of them talked about their frustration with parents providing vapes, parents providing this stuff to kids. So like you said, it's very true that a lot of this is normalized. A lot of adults are addicted, and it's kind of, if you think about, it's a collective disease, the disease of addiction, that as a society, there are some movements like Alcoholics Anonymous and different recovery programs, but as a society, we haven't really tackled that disease of addiction together. And so it's not surprising at all with the big predatory marketing, But yes, so peer pressure is definitely, from all of the young people I've talked to, it's a huge thing. And I think actually one of you all mentioned it last time. You know, positive, negative things spread in social networks. We know that from the research literature, but also negative things do as well. So.
And just like the marketing tactics that Judy showed, we see that the marketing is getting younger. They're targeting younger audiences, right? We saw the one, I think it was Toy Story. We know a lot of the THC products look like candy. And it's really hard to even tell the difference. Oftentimes it looks like cereal, it looks like candy. We've seen a lot of overdoses in children because it does look like candy. And a lot of times we see even like toddlers or even young kids getting a hold of it and not knowing the difference, where it's in homes and just left. And younger kids, unfortunately, are getting a hold of them not knowing the difference. So those unfortunate things even happen because of that.
Next, Annie.
Okay, so I wanted to say something related to vaping specifically. Most, at my school, not all, but my school is very small, but there are some students there, not all of them, but some of them vape because there's no attention. So they're trying to get in trouble and they're trying to get attention. And so they'll vape or smoke THC. And so some of them are really trying to get that negative attention at my school. And I don't know how to resolve that. If the person's addicted really bad, I don't know how to resolve that. But at the same time, some people, there's medicines out there that will make you feel really sick if you like drink or whatever. I don't know if there's something out there that could help people not like the taste or not like of tobacco or THC. Is there any kind of medication that could help with addiction? I think that would be really helpful, but I don't know that there's anything out there.
So I'm not aware of any medication. However, what I am going to do is put in the chat what, the approach to support both prevention and, when kids are addicted, helping them to quit. So I'm going to put that in the chat. These are, again, aligned and came out because of House Bill 142, which is the intent, is to not punish kids, but help all kids, and prevent and help them quit if they want to. So I'm going to put the resource in the chat because those are some of what we know are evidence-based things that can support this, that can occur in school. But you have to have, the adoption of these initiatives by the school. And so there's various formats. So there's some online, but obviously the best way to do it is in person. And there are agencies, the community mental health centers, and the Department for Prevention. So they have people that can help and facilitate these initiatives in the school. So I'm going to, and then there are some like My Life, My Quit is another one. So you can also share that with friends, where they can kind of get on their own program, and that is an evidence-based kind of intervention that they can take control over. So I'm going to put that resource in the chat right now. And then
So one thing that I just came up for me while you were saying that is, if the students don't feel comfortable with adults, then we need to have some kind of good group, right? Where people the same age, where they understand each other, and putting them together with peers and friends and other students in a good group, right? Like having people who aren't doing those things. And so oftentimes people who are trying to, or people who are wanting to quit, will look to other peers and what the other groups are doing.
That's a great point. And what I can say is that the use of peer support groups are the most impactful. But they are, in these initiatives that I've put in here, facilitated by a skilled, trained adult who specializes in this area or who has been trained to facilitate. But I definitely hear you. The peer influence is very, very strong, and I know both Jessica and Michelle can probably speak to that too. And kind of related to your question is the next question we have, which is, and I don't know if you wanted to share any more, but kind of what you're saying is like, if students who are vaping are using other substances, because what I have seen in the data now is there's a very was 125% increase in the use of marijuana, but a 40% decrease in alcohol. And there also looks to be like there's an increase in the use of inhalants and hallucinogens, just looking from the past year's data to the current that we have. So it's not just nicotine or THC. There are other things happening. But for all of you all, where would you go, or students in your school go for help and resources right now? Those that want to quit.
I have in our queue, I have Qua and then Abby.
I actually wrote something for the last one, but like, I guess if students, I guess I kind of wrote a little bit about like where students could go, like resources that like we kind of had at our school. But if it's okay, like can I kind of like talk a little bit about what I kind of initially thought and then go into the second question?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so like I kind of, just from like the initial like data, I was kind of happy to hear like, I guess that we're kind of moving away from punishment and kind of going towards, I guess, resources and trying to help prevent, I guess, further harm, essentially. And that I guess is important to me, kind of thinking about the sense of rebellion that a lot of individuals may have, but then like also how we kind of talked about isolation and like social media earlier. Like kind of, I guess, a punishment could like lead to isolation, as well as like potential harm, like with a student's individual or student/individual for their whole life, depending on like, you know, records and how legislation and like certain, you know, crimes may be involved. And then kind of getting into the second one, you know, we do have a lot of programs at like my district when it comes to like early on deterrence, which I think is an amazing example, but as well as, you know, what we were talking about earlier with not necessarily, I guess, punishment, but trying to lead into resources. Like my school also has specific like vape boxes where you can like just dispose of your vapes without like getting in trouble, or like, I guess, just being able to remain anonymous at the same time, which I think is an amazing place to start. And they actually have pamphlets right next to it with other resources.
That's great. That's really great to hear that they have those anonymous boxes. And also some other informational resources that they can access. But yeah, and just to real quick go back to what you were talking about around the punishment piece and why, you know, these boxes being anonymous, because kids are worried about getting in trouble for seeking help for something, you know. I think it's really ironic that zero tolerance policies started at the federal level, like in the 80s, because of school shootings. But ironically, it hasn't prevented those, you know, but when kids are suspended or put in sent back home, what are they doing when they're home? It's not stopping or deterring the behavior. It's not. So I think, and I think that wisdom is coming around. It just takes a long time to change a mindset about how we deal with things, because I think, like you said, there's the wider context of how we deal with things in our society. And I think the United States is the #1 incarcerator on planet Earth. So that's a fact. So, again, we're in a bigger context. I'm a sociologist by training, so that's where I always take it. And it helps me make sense of some of the things that we know from research is very detrimental. Every outcome we care about, even school safety, is worse. Protective factors, all the outcomes we care about in schools is worse with exclusionary discipline. So, sorry, I didn't mean to go on the tangent. I think, I don't know if there's any more for this question because we have, I think, 7 more, but I guess we'll get to whatever we can. And I don't know, Jessica and Dr. Jones, if we should list all of them and have students react. I'm not sure where we are on the time. I don't want you all to be too off schedule.
Doing just fine. I think about maybe 15 more minutes or so, but we still have 2 more students who'd like to ask. And if it's all right with you, Dr. Vanderhart, I'll go ahead and put all the questions on the slide, and then maybe students can react and share out if that works for both of you.
Sounds good.
So Abby, take it away.
Okay, thank you. So on the first question, I wasn't really surprised that it's correlational that students are using like substances as a coping mechanism. I think most students that I know who are like addicted to substances have like poor home lives, like are economically disadvantaged, or have to like work late into the night and then go to school early. I think the issue is that a lot of students don't want to quit because they like, you know, have poor mental health. They don't see the reason to. And then again at my school, I think we've been impacted by like shortages and such. Both of our counselors this year are new, so I'm not sure that students would feel comfortable going to them. And we have like a few resources, information about like stopping substances, but I was just curious, like, do you have any ideas of like what we could do maybe to like implement those resources in at our own school, say if we don't have them in place already? Thank you.
That's a great question. So I would reference you back to House Bill 142 recommendations and resources, because those are, again, evidence-based. And there's a lot of, so if you open that document, and the way it's laid out is it actually goes line by line with the requirements now. It's not a choice. It's actually a requirement, but we know schools have 1,000 million things going on that they have to do. And this information still isn't saturated into the field yet. So, but this, you know, bringing attention to this document in particular about what is required, it started this year, would be an excellent start, because in there you will find links to the different types of initiatives and supports that can provide help. You know, one thing my friend Tara says in behavioral health is there is no such thing as an evidence-based brochure or assembly, because a lot of times assemblies can be impactful, but oftentimes they actually backfire, because the kids at highest risk are actually thrill seeking. But if schools do assemblies, which is a very common way to approach it, as long as there is something set up, just like with the suicide prevention for processing with students after, and you also have initiatives in place that kids can plug into that for longer term support. This is not, nobody's going to quit, you know, if they're already addicted to just having one assembly. So it's really important. And again, that's why the use of evidence-based is so important in the legislation. The wording is a little wonky because, again, there is no material. This is a human problem, and it requires a human, I always say trauma happens because of inappropriate or, human relationships. And healing occurs only in the midst of a healing, appropriate relationship. So there are some online options, but the best is that we support each other in our healing of addiction to whatever it is. And I'll just say, and I'm sorry, one of the things that struck me really hard in the latest round of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey was like over 50% of all kids in the survey said they binge eat. I think it was like 70%. It was overwhelmingly. And, thinking about food as being one of the quickest ways we can change our mood. That's why people take a drink or smoke. It's like, how can I quickly change my mood? And those are unhealthy ways. And what I know Dr. Searcy walks you all through are what things we can do quickly, taking advantage of the breath in our lungs and our own power to pivot and to, to support ourselves when we're experiencing really unhealthy or challenging times. So, but it's just, again, I think it's part of a collective situation that we need each other to support getting out of or through.
I'll read a comment from Seth in the chat and then turn it over to our next speaker for comment. Seth shared, for the advocacy piece, there's a program called Justice Now where students can make social media campaigns for issues they care about. I think it would be cool to make a series of social media PSAs from actual students against substance use. And then we have comments from Samara and then Lisa.
Going back to something we had talked about a few minutes ago, about how this is really affecting younger students. I work in a elementary school classroom, and I've gotten to firsthand experience how tragic it is in this setting too. I was working with a student who had something in their hand and they thought it was a pen, but it turned out to be a vape that their older sibling had access to. And that was one of my aha moments of, oh, wow, like this is an actual epidemic that is affecting even the youngest of students. So to that, my question is, do students genuinely realize the difference between what is and what isn't a vape, especially those younger ones? Because of course, yes, we have a lot of predatory marketing, and a lot of those younger students are victims to that even in their own households. So really taking the time to educate a lot of our younger students to say, hey, like this is what, if you see something like this in your own possessions, this chances are this is not something you think it is, and don't take any further actions on that. But also too, like someone had mentioned, they're being provided with some of these substances from their own households, or they're getting a hold of it within their own environments. So honestly, even though it kind of pivots away from the initial question of how do schools kind of help alleviate this issue, how do schools engage communities and really involving them in that process and transition of healing that coping mechanism or the lack thereof. I think a lot too, someone had mentioned, is the feeling a lot of students get off of the high and the adrenaline of nicotine, to where students are like, okay, I can quickly fix this problem just by taking the substance or participating in this act. So I think too, it's kind of presenting an alternative. And I think that's honestly one of the quickest ways schools in general can kind of allow students to see a difference, to allow them to see that there is another alternative to what is in front of them. So I think too, like, how do schools essentially present students with that option? Because a lot of times students are being presented the option of choosing more stress with extracurriculars, their classwork, their work environments, their home lives. So how do we as schools and us as students kind of present students with that option of choosing healthier coping mechanisms rather than that quick high?
I don't mean to keep jumping in. I want to hear more voices, but that goes to the third question: is what is happening in schools? There are a lot of things we can do, and like you said, the earlier the better. And I think that peer-to-peer approach is really powerful. Even having high school students speak to the elementary school students. But one thing we heard from the Frisk is that while some kids are coming from households where they're being provided these things, other parents don't want elementary school kids to have any vaping prevention because it makes them worried. So there's so many things schools have to balance, but 1,000%, I think we have to be teaching, and that goes to question 3, the alternatives to coping.
Lisa.
Thank you. So I actually wanted to go back on like the community aspect of prevention. We all know about like peer pressure, and we all know that a lot of times kids get into vaping because of peer pressure. But it can be utilized as well. Like peer pressure doesn't only have to be negative. People love trends. So I feel like if we involve like classmates, we involve like social media people that we know to kind of make not vaping like a trendy thing, people will hop on that because kids love trends. We can utilize the fact that our generation is like a monkey see, monkey do type of generation. If they see that people aren't vaping and that vaping isn't like a cool thing anymore, they're going to be more encouraged to like not do it because they don't want to be not cool. This will probably work really well for the younger generation that is now like seeing an increase in vaping use. But also with that, I wanted to mention maybe like some legislative changes that we can make. Is there currently an age limit for buying vapes? That's a question. I don't know. But if there isn't, there definitely should be like an age limit for purchasing vapes and nicotine products and all of those things. And then we should also be working with like convenience stores to make sure that that's actually being enforced. So like if you go into the store and you're trying to buy a vape, first of all, like, do you have an ID? Like, can you even drive? Why are you buying a vape when you're not even of like the age to drive or do anything like that? So those are just some changes and some comments from me. Thank you.
So interestingly, House Bill 142 actually started as a bill to hold convenience stores and people that sell vapes accountable, to have some accountability with that. But then it turned to the schools because we solve everything. Yeah, so it is a problem. And, I think just like alcohol, people buy vapes and things are sold without IDs. So.
Lisa, I also like your positivity on that to highlight the good and the positive that's going on, not just focus on the negative. Judy and I and some other co-team members that we work with provide training in a program that really highlights on the positives and the strengths that go on. And it is a peer-led program that really focuses on the positive and negative. And we often use vaping statistics as one of those that say, well, this number of students are vaping. Well, what about the number of students that are not vaping, and really turn that spin around and focus on the positive and instead of the negative. And I really like how you highlighted that and that strength there, and really focus on what's really going on positive in our school. Let's focus on what's, the strengths in our school, and focus and highlight, maybe the clubs and the activities and the supports that we have in our school, and really highlight, what healthy things that we have in our school that can really highlight, stress seeking activities that can de-stress students and promote that healthy lifestyle, and the strengths that, help us get through, the stress in our life instead of turning to, vaping and things like that. So I really like your spin on that. And highlighting that in your community and your school to kind of promote that wellness and promoting that instead of turning that negative and focusing on the positive.
Judy, it looks like we have three more students on the queue, and probably about time after that to transition to our next item, if that works for you. So I have Anaji, Austin, and then Graham.
All right, so I wanted to touch on two things, basically kind of piggybacking off of what they said. Personally, I think community involvement is really important. I just immediately thought of like a parallel to how when I was younger, we learned fire safety. They brought the fire department brought out the house, and we went through all that education and about how we knew what to do when there was like a fire, say a fire happened in our house. everybody remembers stop, drop, and roll. So I think personally, if we brought in law enforcement to educate younger students and to instill things in their brain about the use of substance abuse and vaping, like this is what this is. And I'm sure a bunch of, whether it's from parents or older siblings, or whatever, the younger kids have probably seen it. Like kids are smarter than most people think. So I think it's just making them aware of what it is and that it's bad for you, and instilling that in their brains that would probably help prevent a lot of other things, just like fire and whatever, all the other things that schools, elementary schools, middle schools go over. So I think that would be beneficial, most definitely. And then another thing is convenience stores. A lot of businesses are out for money, so their age limit for buying vapes in Kentucky is 21, as well as alcohol. And I know personally, coming from a small town, that a lot of people that don't care and they sell it to them anyways. And there's not a lot of repercussions for people that do that. It's maybe a fine if they get caught, but then they just go right back into it. So I think it is very important for it to kind of be like, it is an epidemic, I can say, from what I've seen. So it's very important to kind of get that under control, whether it is our schools working closely with businesses and county or in the state in general. So just developing ideas to hold them accountable, because I think that is a big problem. But yeah, that's my.
I love that. Thank you. And I think along with the education piece is getting kids a chance to role play. How do you turn it down when someone's offering it to you in the bathroom? Like practicing, because they don't come natural. Like, you know, it's hard with peer pressure.
All right, Austin and then Graham.
Yeah, kind of going off of what you just said. For question 4, if you were offered a substance, like for a lot of people, it's kind of hard to just say like no, because of like either the fear of being posted on social media, or like the fear of being like clowned and shamed like in front of all your peers because you didn't want to do this thing. So I feel like a lot of it turns into like this pressure to like do it and to be like cool, so that you aren't like excluded because you didn't do it. So I feel like it's not as simple as saying no, but I feel like it's gotten a lot stronger and better because people have seen the risks. So I feel like practicing would be good, but I also feel like seeing people do it and seeing that like you won't be shamed, like seeing that there is like, think that that is an option, like you don't have to do it all the time, is also another good thing for students, because I feel like a lot of people don't see that. Like they only see their friends getting shamed and they only see their friends getting clowned for it. So I guess providing examples that it's okay and it's safe is probably the best approach to like helping more students turn that down when asked. Because you can say anything, but I feel like if you don't believe it'll truly work, then it's not going to be as effective.
Thank you so much for bringing that in. It's really important.
And Graham.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about like the topic of the access to the vapes and stuff, because as you guys mentioned, it's like illegal for people underage to have access to them from the source and from a store. So I was wondering if like schools would be able to take initiative to see where kids are most often getting access to it, because I know peer sales can be a big contributing like factor and a big avenue for students to get access to it. So if there was like a way for schools to be able to identify the possibility of peer sales and getting in contact with the students that are like initiating those in order to see how they could aid that student in order to like have a chain reaction to aid the people that they are selling the vapes to. And then as for like convenience stores, I was wondering like with the ideas of partnership, if it would be possible for schools to partner with them to set like time restrictions, because I know in my town, there's convenience stores in both directions of our school that are very close and have access to vapes. So it's easy for students to pick them up on their walk home or on their walk to school. So I was wondering if like there'd be a way for schools to partner with them in order to put in policies where maybe there would be a limited time where vapes could not be sold, or at least like heightened security in regards to checking IDs and whatnot. And so, yeah, those were my ideas to hopefully help reduce access.
I absolutely love those ideas, and I think it would be amazing to be able to, watch and document something like that happening if a school were to take the initiative to partner with some of the local businesses, and also kind of what you talked about, I guess what kids call the plug, identifying those students and, like you said, working with them, not just suspending them, because that's not going to prevent, they'll just create another one. So I think that would be amazing if, some of these initiatives could bloom and put some pressure on the local businesses too. I mean, it shouldn't be on schools to do that, but I think could be a great example. It's a great solution. You guys are very solution focused, and it's beautiful to listen to and take in. And we'll continue to share your voice when we're out there with different groups.
I think those were the last comments. We had a few in the chat. Judy, if the students would like to help continue the conversation or would like to offer some feedback or responses after the meeting, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yes, I will put both Jessica and my email into the chat, and just shoot an email and we'll get back. That would be great. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for your thoughtful, insightful discussion today.
Thank you, Judy and Jessica and everyone for great participation and feedback. As they mentioned, they take your feedback and they are able to help share it forward. So we really appreciate student input in the conversation. At this time, we'll transition to our next agenda item in the meeting to help us just before we adjourn at 11. But I'd like to invite Preston Graham. He's a Student Advisory Council member. He's also a non-voting student member who serves on our Kentucky Board of Education. And Preston is going to talk with you all about an opportunity to provide student input on Kentucky's assessment and accountability system. Preston, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready. All right, pressure's on. But good morning, everybody. Hello. I'm in coordinates with being a member of the Student Advisory Council. I'm also part of the Kentucky Board of Education. And along with that, I was presented with a unique opportunity to talk to you all today about Kentucky's new assessment and accountability system. I would also like to challenge all of my elders in this call to, if I ever say something wrong or you would like to elaborate on something, Mr. Fletcher, please do not feel worried in regards to interrupting me. I know you usually don't, but feel free anytime.
I'll be happy to tag team with you, Preston, if you'd like.
I appreciate it. So before I begin, can I just get a general poll in the chat? How much do we know about this new system? Is this like the first time you've heard of this? Is it the first, or are you familiar with it? Just give me like a 1 to 5 ranking. Like 1 being never heard of this, 5, I know everything. Right. Seeing a lot of ones. I figured as such. It took me a long time to learn this, so I think we should just start from the beginning. So a little while ago, do we okay. So the overall idea here is the Kentucky United We Learn Council a little while ago set kind of a moonshot, a very ambitious goal, and that was to build and I'm going to directly quote it here. That was to build a prosperous Kentucky, we will launch an accountability system that is meaningful and useful to all of our learners. So that was a very ambitious goal of the Kentucky United We Learn Council, and that's kind of why it's called the moonshot, and that's why we have this graphic actually, is because as it's going to the moon. But here on this side, we kind of display the timeline. We are currently in the study phase over in fall of 2024. And the main reason I'm talking to you all today is it is my job to present to you all the information regarding the accountability and assessment system so that I can get your feedback so that we can continue to update and improve the new accountability system. So in general, the reason we're updating this accountability system is to kind of focus more on a quote, vibrant learning experiences. To define that, that means learning that matters to students and culminates in the application of knowledge and skills demonstrated through personalized products. So this is more than just traditional learning within a classroom. Think of it like capstones, student-centered learning, student-centered conferences. Pretty much, while the current system focuses on the counting stats, the test scores, all of the grades, general stuff like that. But in a modern era, and especially with colleges where they're more focused on a holistic approach, it's important to be able to evaluate a school based on just being able to show the entirety of a vibrant learning experience. So, ways they're doing this is definitely more of a focus on vibrant learning experiences and attaching vibrant learning experiences as part of that grading for an accountability. This is one of the ideas they're talking about is using this as a percentage. So that is the VLE percentage, basically talking about reporting the percentage of students participating in vibrant learning experiences using the criteria, using a few examples to grade, those being, once again, the capstones, anything that's outside of the traditional learning experience. Additionally, they have some very ambitious goals in regards to how they are going to report this data, namely the accreditation style. The accreditation style uses outside resources, think like an auditor process. Giving the schools more flexibility, as well as the opportunity to respond to a draft report by this external evaluator prior to a final submission. That way they can check over anything that might be wrong. Additionally, as part of that, they're looking to update assessment and that state testing at the end of the year we love so much. So instead of necessarily the current system, they're thinking about doing a through-year system. What that means is, are we all aware of like most high schools, or at least elementary and middle schools, have this kind of like program where they would test you throughout the year, maybe a fall, winter, and spring. In my school, that's called MAP testing, and it's an outside program. Basically, the goal is kind of to remove the need for schools to get an outside program. Instead, the KDE will create multiple assessments throughout the school year, a formative, and a summative, primarily at the end of the year. That way, there won't be a need to kind of like go to an outside system, saving the school's time and effort, because the schools will get these results back almost immediately, which is very nice. I will stress that there are some federal restrictions. We can't get rid of all state assessment. There is still the need to test math, reading, and IELTS, I believe. Those are the federal requirements. And additionally, there is also talks of doing a competency-based assessment, which is also very ambitious, but it would involve using math, reading, and science for short-term form assessments as well as authentic performance tests. That's kind of an overview as to some of the ideas that are being presented according to this new accountability system. Do we have any immediate thoughts? I challenge anybody to raise their hand and ask any questions they might have.
Preston, if I may add, I thought Preston did a great job of giving the overview and some of the things that just to help that context, there are, as he put out there, as he stated, there's certain federal accountability requirements. For example, we are required to assess grades 3 through 8 in math and reading. But we're also required to have science at grade level groups. For example, in the elementary school, there's a requirement to have a science test. There is a requirement to have a science test in middle school. There's a requirement to have a science test at the high school level. Now, a lot of things that you see now with federal, and this is federal accountability, is we have to be able to put schools in such a way that we can label who are the schools that need the most help. And when those are called CSI schools, the comprehensive school improvement schools, that maybe in the bottom 5%, it's federally defined as the bottom 5% in the state that score in math and reading, or whatever your federal accountability system is. So the idea of having a federal accountability system here, but also too, one of the things that Preston touched on too is what about a local accountability model? And that's where that vibrant learning comes into play. And this is I'll give you some examples. You know, you have a lot of districts that have a portrait of the learner. And I'm assuming that several of you within your district, you have a portrait of the learner. I know Woodford County has a portrait of the learner that basically has different competencies, where it be a collaboration, communication, lifelong learner, global citizen. They have a lot of different competencies that they're trying to promote to give a more well-rounded student. I'll give you a great example. I've used Logan County several times. They have a local accountability model that they also look at state and federal testing. It's a part of it, but they also measure students. One of the measures they use is student well-being. They ask their community, what do you need from us? What do you want? What kind of data you want to see? And their community answered back, we'd like to see like student attendance data. One of the other measures they use is what percentage of their students are involved in extracurricular or co-curricular activities. Now think about that. I mean, where in state accountability or federal accountability do we have anything that measures student well-being? And one of the measures they use is, you know, if you're involved in anything from a club to maybe an academic team, sports team, or something of that matter, they want to make sure they get as many students as possible involved. As a matter of fact, if you do research, one of the best indicators of success after high school is how involved are you within your school setting. And so one of the things that they really push within their district is what percentage of their students are involved. And that's a well-being measure. So I think there's a lot of great examples like that out throughout the districts. There's also others that look at their portrait learner and look at those competency-based assessments to have students to do, like he mentioned, capstones or defenses of learning. Also, too, districts look at how many of our students are taking work-based learning, service learning, things that are really relevant in your setting. So again, I thought he did a great job, but it's also too, if you add in that there's federal requirements that we still have a part of. Then also, too, given the opportunity for districts to look at a local accountability portion that is more trying to test what exactly, or measure, I shouldn't say test, measure the relevance of what you're doing in each and every day in your classrooms. So I'll let Preston answer questions, or I can answer questions if we have any out there. No questions?
I just had a quick clarification question. When y'all say like the assessment testing, y'all are like referring to like KSA testing and like what used to be K-Prep, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. And one of the things that you'll see across all of our districts, there's some type of, whether it be MAP, iReady, and there's other testing systems that students will take a formative assessment in the fall, one in the spring, and then one at the end of the year. They're already doing that to measure their progress in reading, mathematics, and other areas. So why can't that be more like an accountability system? So instead of waiting, and it be an adaptive system, and so instead of waiting till the fall of the next year to get your assessment data, why can't we have some type of assessment system that you get the data in the fall, and then you can make changes in instruction, especially at the elementary level, to say these are interventions or maybe these are enrichments. We have a student that's a first grader maybe that's reading on the 6th grade level. What do we need to do to push them farther, to make sure that school is relevant for them and how they push them farther as a gifted student? Or a student that may be behind a couple of grade levels that say, you know what can we do to accelerate what you need to do? But also, too, give them those opportunities to say, this is a passion project of a student. If you've seen students that, I don't know if any of you have been a part of STLP, the Student Technology Leadership Program, they have their statewide competition at Rupp Arena in the spring, early spring each year, and it's amazing to see the projects our students are doing. It's almost like a science fair on steroids, if you will, but they're working all throughout the year on a passion project that they want to present and talk about technology, how that integrates in what they're doing each and every day. I mean, what if you were coming to school each and every day and it's more than just, what did I get on my AP Calculus test, which is important. We're not trying to say it's not, but also too, how did I apply the mathematics I learned today in some type of real world type situation that made an impact on my community?
Commissioner, we have Isabella has her hand raised. I believe we have about time for one question. And Preston, I would invite you to then share with the group what your challenge is and how they can share feedback. So Isabella and then Preston.
Yeah, I don't really have a question. It's so much just like I like the idea of incorporating these vibrant learning experiences into the assessment and accountability system, because we're recognizing that students learn and present their learning in different ways, and not everyone does well on tests, but that doesn't mean they're not exceeding in the classroom in other ways. And just having some way to make sure students can give feedback about their vibrant learning experiences so that they're not just kind of performative things that the schools are putting on, but something that students are actually getting things out of. That was just my comment, but thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. And that's the goal. Everybody in this room knows that students are more than just a test score. You're much more than a test score. And you need to have other opportunities to display that learning. For example, I've seen defenses of learning from students that may only be novice or apprentice in reading, but you know what? They were a welder that is an excellent welder, that may be one of the top in their class and maybe the top in our area as a welding student, or maybe they're just they're back a little bit backwards, a little bit shy, and maybe they're looking at ways to say, you know what, I want to go into law school, and these are the things I've done along the way that get me ready for that and make me and allows me to defend the learning I've had so far. So again, I think students are more than just a test score. Now, I think tests are important so we can diagnose any issues or diagnose anything like, these are your strengths. And these are things we want to still push you on. But on the other hand, these are things that we can help you learn from. These are the things that we can help you get to where you want to go, whatever that may be. It doesn't have to be just don't get me wrong, I'm a strong proponent of getting a 4-year degree, but many of our students will get a 2-year degree and make more money than the commissioner ever will. So it's all about happiness and trying to help students get to where they want to be. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Preston.
Yes, and I thank you, Dr. Fletcher, for your advice and comments. So the question then becomes, what can we do with all this? Well, previously, I know I had sent out everybody a survey that was directed towards pretty much interviewing each student and getting their feedback on specific aspects of the new accountability and assessment system. I'm not aware of how many people filled that out, but I will be sure to resend that to you all immediately following this meeting. My challenge is that everybody in the council, I challenge each of you all to fill out that survey, as well as to interview one additional student, because the reason we're looking for this is, if you didn't know, the original there was originally a survey that was sent out about a month ago, and in total there was only one student response on that survey. And as students are the most important group to education, we need as many student responses as possible. So I challenge each of y'all to fill out that survey, get at least one other student to fill out that survey, and even more if you're feeling there. That is all.
Thank you, Preston. That was a really great presentation and invitation and challenge. And as Preston mentioned, he will share that information with the council with the additional details about seeking additional feedback from your peers. I do want to note we are at time for our meeting. I want to thank everyone for really great conversation and input. As always, we really value student perspective and feedback on several items here today, and we look forward to sharing that forward with other staff here at KDE. I want to remind everyone our next council meeting is December 10, virtual meeting, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and you all have received that meeting invitation. We look forward to seeing you in December, and please be on the lookout for additional follow-up information from today's meeting. And so at this point, we will close our meeting. And look forward to your feedback on the survey Preston mentioned. So thank you, everyone. We hope you have a great rest of your day.